Welcome back, the Chiefs, here on OneNews. We are now in the final stage of our episode. Joining us is architect Romolo V. Nati. Architect Nati is the executive chairman and CEO of Italpinas Development Corporation, or IDC, an Italian-Filipino real estate development company. Good evening, Architect Nati.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
And our architect, of course, we invited you here because you have been advocating for green architecture. Every time somebody mentions green architecture to Filipinos, we say, I'm all in for that. But the second thing we think is green architecture, I know it sounds and I know it's expensive. But when you advocate for green architecture, especially in this new and hopefully better normal, what are you trying to say?
Okay, first of all, I would like to say that the fact that the stereotype that green buildings, green architecture is expensive, again, it's a stereotype. With my company here in the Philippines, Italpinas Development Corporation, we have been proven that green buildings can also be accessible in terms of price. Mainly because we use natural green features, which are mainly embedded in the design itself. So we do not add too many technological features in the building. So the construction of the building is cost to other buildings. So we enhance ventilation, natural light, and things like that. As you said, in this period, green buildings are becoming more and more relevant because of this feature that I just mentioned. Mainly the natural ventilation and the access to outdoor spaces. I'm sure that all of us, yourself as well, experienced that there are a lot of buildings in Southeast Asia that do not have terraces. So in case of lockdown, that like we have experienced in the past months, not having access from your unit to an outdoor space like a terrace can be very tough. So having terraces it can help in period of lockdown. And green buildings in general have this easy access to open spaces. On top of that, increase of natural ventilation help to reduce the use of aircon, and there are studies proving that the spread of the virus can be enhanced through the air conditioning system. So living in an environment that doesn't need too much aircon definitely help to reduce the risk of getting a virus or even bacteria. So these are some features that can help in this kind of situation.
Okay, so talking about green architecture, or for that matter, green living, and talking about it not as a product or not even as a service, but as a movement. I mean, tell us, what can Filipinos do to be part of this movement, even within their own homes? What are some basic principles that we can do to be greener in our lives, even right now, without having to spend anything?
Yeah, that's a great question. I always say that we can provide green products, green buildings, green everything, green services, but if the culture of the people that uses these products or these services is not green, then it's a problem. So there are many ways that everyone can contribute to live in a more sustainable way. First of all, is reducing the use of cars or reduce movement so that we reduce the production of CO2. At the same time, we can try to reduce the use of aircon because I don't know, I mean, in the Philippines, in Southeast Asia, for example, around 60% of energy is used for aircon. So if we can use less aircon, we produce less CO2 as well, and we consume less power. Another thing can be, for example, very simple thing that I always do in a house, in my office, I turn off lights when nobody's using a certain space. This also can contribute to reduce consumption of power. Same thing can be said for water. For example, there are very simple tips. No, when we brush our teeth, we have to turn off the water and open it just when we brush. We need to water the brush. So all these small things, if you can multiply for millions of people, you can imagine the great impact that these small tips can have in helping to reduce the environmental impact that everyone has. I could go ahead and tell other many things, but I mean, these are very simple things that anyone can really do.
Architecture, green architecture concept, you're pushing for more natural ventilation, uh, more airflow, lighter use of energy and water. Can this be applied in the crowded areas of Metro Manila in very small spaces, even in maybe very low income households?
That it actually can. I just saw the interview to the mayor of Quezon City. You would be impressed to know that in Quezon City, building regulation in the past, several years ago, I think in the 60s, 50s, there were already embedded basic rules to have buildings increasing natural ventilation and enhancing natural light. So, and we're talking about Quezon City. So green buildings can be developed anywhere, everywhere, and so it's not too much a problem where it's located. It's more about the design itself and how people use this structure. Obviously, we cannot expect that the air that can be experienced in, I don't know, in a place where in a no crowded space with not too much traffic, obviously it's going to be better quality than the air inside a very crowded city. But this doesn't mean that a green building cannot be developed, because we can have filter, we can find ways to mitigate this, let's say, negative situation.
They can be built into low-cost housing structures. Are there any local government units that have been consulting with you for this type of design for low-cost housing?
To be frank, they didn't, but we are spontaneously doing that. We are now developing new products that we will launch in the market soon that are specifically dedicated for the socializing, economic, and mid-cost housing. Green buildings, again, as I go back to the first question, are green buildings expensive? It depends. Green buildings or greenhouses can be not expensive. It depends how the project is conceptualized. Obviously, if we think with the old set mindset, and then we want to make if when we design a building or a house, the approach is an old approach, then of course we have to add a lot of features that will make the building or the house costly. But if the approach at the onset is different, for example, in the housing, in the socializing market, the approach should be different from the very beginning in terms of finding the right location, in terms of using the right materials, in terms of increasing the ventilation, so in the design stage. Also using, for example, special films to be applied to the window. So there are many things that can make a house, even socialized economic house, very effective in terms of reducing the environmental impact. I know that even if there are some developers already in that space that are providing solar panels and other kind of features. I think this will become mainstream. This will grow, above all after this experience of the COVID. There is, in our experience, for example, in Italpinas, we have been positively impressed to see that sales of our unit didn't decrease, actually increased. So it means that people during this pandemic realize how important it is to live and to invest and have our family to live in an environment that is healthier. And green buildings or greenhouse healthier.
I was going to ask architect, how can architecture or how can design have helped to prevent COVID? Or for that matter, looking forward, how can design and architecture help to build safer homes, safer buildings, safer communities?
I think everyone learned a lot from what happened and what is still ongoing. As architects, we learn the lessons, and we understand that we have to consider when we design our structure that a situation like this one can happen again. So how can we mitigate the negative effect that this lockdown and this pandemic brought? Obviously, we need to think about, I don't like to call it social distance. I prefer to call it personal distance, because it's not social. Actually, sociality shouldn't be affected. On top of that, we need to consider again increasing as much as possible the natural ventilation of the units, because natural air and natural light can help to reduce the spread of the virus. Again, there are studies saying that the sun can kill the virus in a few seconds, I think. And so having access to natural light can help. Also, connectivity is also very important, because again, assuming there will be another lockdown, we all know that we need to be connected. So, for example, in the Philippines, I have to say that no one talks about how good the network system work in the Philippines, because can you imagine how many people during the lockdown were using the network, and the network was stable. I didn't hear anybody say, "Oh, this worked very well." But in general, people always complain. The same in Italy. But I would like to see people also appreciate how good was to live that period with a good connection. So these are some of the things we learn. Try to manage personal distance, increase ventilation, natural light, and connection. And also, sorry, last one, proximity to malls and grocery, because as we all experienced, it was not easy to do grocery and to access basic needs.
Yeah, but architect, I was actually going to ask about that, because as you said, you mentioned our conversation with Mayor Joy Belmonte of Quezon City. You're an architect. We understand that. Of course, architects, as they do, also think as urban developers and as urban planners. We know you have that side in you as well. As more local governments and as more governments pour their plans and their resources into building new infrastructure, improving infrastructure, whether it's stopgap or for the long term, what would you say is the opportunity for them to redesign our cities right now? What would you suggest that cities look at in terms of our roads, our streets, the mobility of people, and so on?
I think one very important aspect is to decongest the mega cities. So let's talk about Metro Manila. So I heard that now there is a plan called Balik Provincia, for example. But even apart from this plan of trying to develop other cities in other locations, not Metro Manila, I think it would help already a lot. So from my point of view, infrastructure are very much needed in emerging cities in the Philippines, so that Philippines can become sooner rather than later a multipolar country with several cities that have importance, so that in such a way that if something happens, for example, in Metro Manila, other cities can contribute to the growth of the country. Because just today I heard an interview where I heard that around 60% of the GDP of the Philippines is produced in Calabarzon area and Metro Manila. So you can imagine if that area would stop for several months, what happened to the country? So I think this is, from my personal point of view, a target, a goal that the Philippines should always take in mind. Try to develop emerging location in the Philippines. I mean, it's an archipelago. There are more than 7,000 islands, and there are many cities that need more infrastructure. Having said that, I think it's very important, again, to reduce traffic, because it looks like from recent study that smog pollution also help the virus to spread faster. This comes from Italy, where we have in a place in Lombardia, close to Milan, we had very, very many cases, and it looks like the smog and the pollution help the virus to spread. So if we can reduce, of course, traffic, and if we can increase connectivity, speed of the internet connectivity, and things like that. But again, to me, the most important thing would be the multipolar concept of developing the Philippines, and I think this government is going there. I think that's what I'm reading.
Well, we've been talking about decongesting Metro Manila and even Calabarzon for a long time, relocating all these businesses. But for the short term, what can be doable for the short term? Uh, you can see a lot of things being tried during this pandemic. How can we take advantage of the quarantines? Because they're experimenting with transportation, for example. Where else can we go to try and push for greener design, greener lifestyle during the pandemic? How can we take advantage of this?
I mean, I think that the lesson of the pandemic taught everyone to many things. I mean, we are still elaborating. I think it will be even in the future. For example, in the case of Luzon, there are going south and going north. I think it's going to be the trend of real estate and development in the near future. So again, decongesting Metro Manila towards, I don't know, going to Batangas and going to Clark and Subi, where also there is land, and there are already connection because there are highways going south and going north. I know also they are now connecting South Luzon to North Luzon Expressway, so to access the north is going to be easier. So I frankly think that there was already, before the pandemic, a process of decongesting Metro Manila, going south and going north, and also investing in infrastructure in the provinces. In also other locations apart from Luzon. I'm talking about Visayas and Mindanao. I think that this process will accelerate. So again, where you ask me where can we go, I mean, I think outside the mega city, because congestion, many people in a small place, it's very easy to understand, will not be good for virus protection, because the contamination will be faster. But again, to answer your question, I would say going south and going north. For example, I can talk about our company. We decided to go and to develop in Santo Tomas, in Batangas, which is only 45 minutes from here, and it's all highway. And we have a very good market response. So people is ready. It's ready to go outside Metro Manila if they can access Metro Manila easier. Just to make an example, easier for myself that I live in Makati to drive to Santo Tomas, which I will spend 45 minutes, than going to Quezon City. That it will require maybe 2 hours. So what I'm saying is, we need to switch the way we think. Time of movement is not anymore related to distance, but to the way we can get in a certain place. Again, Santo Tomas is farther than Quezon City, but I can reach Tomas faster than Quezon City.
Yeah.
So
Architect, I want to I want to take on your concept for this multipolar approach. We've had many guests here, urban development experts, and so on. And I know that there is that debate between building vertically in the city that is already an engine for jobs and development versus sprawl, which am I taking that the wrong way? That multipolar principle or approach that you're espousing is in essence encouraging sprawl. Because we've spoken with some urban development experts that are also saying, no, horizontal is not the way to go. The way to go is to build vertically and to make the most of the fact that people are already in the cities precisely because the jobs are in the cities.
But we talk about cities now. We are talking about Metro Manila that as of today, I think has maybe 14 million people. This is already a mega city, a megalopoly. Okay, it's a huge number of people. But we have other cities like, for example, Cagayan de Oro was maybe 1,500,000 people living there. It's already a big city. Maybe if we compare it to Manila, it's more. But if we compare it, for example, with any cities in Europe or in England, in my country, a 1 million people city is already a big city. So apart from that, of course, in the past, there was a very aggressive migration in the Philippines. I'm talking from provinces to Metro Manila, because in the provinces there were no opportunities. It was very costly to fly. It was not like today, maybe 4 years ago. It was very expensive. On top of that, there was no internet connection. So it means that when you were in the province, you were really in the province, in a remote area where maybe even news arrived, I don't know how many days after Metro Manila. The situation is not anymore like that. So now you can live in Cagayan de Oro like you live in Metro Manila. If you have internet, you have access to the same information. If you want to go to Manila or any other city, you can fly very easily and very cheap. And there are growing opportunities. And you have also to consider that, for example, many OFWs that are not from Metro Manila, but from the Visayas or from Mindanao, they are investing in the Philippines, and they would love to invest from the city where they are from. In fact, this is also something that is happening, and I have to be proud that Italpinas, was ahead of the curve. That if we develop in an emerging cities, like, again, I can say Cagayan because we are there, but we can mention many others, you will see that OFWs will invest there and will eventually go there and bringing investment, bringing money, bringing opportunities to work. Also, the BPOs started to relocate their office outside Metro Manila. They started in surrounding areas in Metro Manila, then they started to go in the Visayas and in Mindanao. So what I'm saying is, development goes where infrastructure are. If the infrastructure will move towards in emerging cities in the Philippines, we can be sure that there will be more jobs, there will be more people moving from the mega city to the province.
Okay.
That's my thought.
Yeah.
Architect, apart from the pandemic, we are entering monsoon season. This is a land, you've been here for a decade, you know that this is a land of natural calamities, earthquakes, floods, mudslides. How can you apply green architecture concepts to disaster resilience?
Okay. Actually, yes, Philippines is prone to many calamities, but is also very capable to respond to them because of the history, no? So it is nothing new. A typhoon is not something new for the Philippines. An earthquake is not new for the Philippines, and floods as well. So in terms of green architecture, what I think is very important is, for a moment, let's forget about green architecture. Let's think about building smart. Thinking before we build something. So I wouldn't suggest anyone to build a building or a house in a place that a proof history of floods, because the chances that the flood will repeat are higher, not correct? Because there is already records of that. In terms of typhoon, there are studies that can be done during the design stage, and we do that can simulate a very high speed wind speed and understand how buildings behave according to this strong wind. So in general, when there are typhoons, a building can stand quite well. I think in the Philippines the problem is the informal settlers that most of the time have problems in withstanding typhoons. In terms of earthquakes, same story. I mean, there is a long tradition in the Philippine construction industry that make building very well done. Actually, when people asked me just a few days ago, they asked me, "What do you think about the Philippine way of building buildings and houses in case of earthquake?" I have to say, and I am a developer, so I have experience. Philippines build very nice structure. I mean, it's already embedded in the culture of the Filipino to build very strong structure, reinforced concrete, able to stand major calamity in terms of earthquake. In fact, even it was last April. I mean, it was 2019. There was a quite big earthquake in Metro Manila. I think it was 6.5 or 5.6, something big. I mean, there were some damages, but nothing major. If something like that would happen, sorry to say, in my country, the damages and the people that may could have been hurt, could have casualty would have been much bigger. So what I'm saying is, let's also see the positive side. Philippines knows how to build structure in a proper way, but of course, as you said, we have to be very careful, always thinking about typhoon, earthquake, and floods.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Well, unfortunately, that's all very interesting, and unfortunately, we've run out of time. Architect Romolo Nati, Executive Chairman and CEO
Thank you very much.
of Italpinas. Thank you for joining the Chiefs.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, sir.
Good
Yes.
evening, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and that's a wrap for tonight. You can also catch OneNews on the Signal Play app. Register for a free account now at www.signalplay.com and stream OneNews live anytime, anywhere. That'll be all for this edition of The Chiefs. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. I'm Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
I'm Robbie Alampay. We are OneNews.